Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Moyo Talk studio live from Cape Town this morning. We have our panel of experts. My name is Mark Bind, and I'm one of the co-founders of Moyo Talks, which was inspired by the 8 O'Clock Club. The 8 O'Clock Club has been running for over 11 years in Cape Town, sharing wisdom and teachings from teachers from around the world. With me today, I have a number of people who are experts in healing and psychic development and wellness, and I'd like to introduce them to you. Firstly, we have Cindy Holmes. Cindy Holmes is an intuitive life and business coach, an entrepreneur, and also the director of the School of Intuition and Healing in Cape Town. Cindy, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here today. And I'm so looking forward to sharing the platform with Brett and Claire. And I'm looking forward to us having a good time today. And thank you, Mark, for hosting.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you, Cindy. Next to Cindy, we have Claire Creighton. Claire Creighton is a shamanic practitioner. Her mission is to help people remember who they are and to live with purpose from their heart. Claire does shamanic soul retrieval healing. She teaches shamanic journey workshops, surrendering into the heart meditation courses, and discover your mission and purpose courses. Claire studied and trained in London with the College of Psychic Studies, the School of Intuition and Healing, Second Sight Healing, the Sacred Trust, the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain, the Eagle's Wing, and the Four Winds Academy. As you can see, Claire has a wealth of wisdom and knowledge to share with us. Claire, if you could say hello.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this space. I'm really excited to share information with you and to receive any questions that you might have later. I'm really excited to know more about everybody else in this space today as we have our chat. So let us enjoy this next hour together.
Great. Thank you very much, Claire. And then next to me, we have Brett Simpson. Brett Simpson's career as a life coach began in 2007 after being diagnosed with an unusually aggressive skin cancer that spread into his lymphatic system and threatened him with a potentially terminal prognosis. He needed to unravel the emotional and psychological impact of his cancer journey, and he has since become a highly reputable and sought-after cancer guide and guardian, drawing on more than a decade's dedication to counseling, coaching, studying, and personal experimentation to find true holistic wellness. His knowledge and heart-centered approach, combined with his experience within his own cancer journey as a patient, a carer, guide, and guardian, provide him with a unique combination of skills and wisdom to facilitate meaningful shifts for those seeking a soft landing, support practical tools, and a tangible plan towards healing. Brett also has a wealth of qualifications and experience. He was the CEO of Cancer Buddies, wrote the Our Buddy guidance and healing program for people living with cancer before building his own consulting and coaching practice. Brett, if you can say hi.
How's it? Thank you very much, Cindy and Mark. Really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with everybody and yeah, just sharing some wisdom with the people around me. And yeah, I look forward to the conversation. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Brett. But to get us started, Claire, perhaps I can ask you a question.
Yes.
How did you get started on your journey? What led you to the path that you're on today?
So I was working in the corporate world. I was a marketing manager, and I was very much enjoying my work and the life that I was living at the time. And one morning I woke up and I couldn't move my body. And I was like, what on earth has happened to me? And it turns out that I'd contracted a thing called viral arthritis, which is a virus that gets into the joints of the body. And when the doctor spoke to me, she said to me, well, what's caused it is actually stress. You must be very, very stressed. I kind of thought didn't really feel that I was stressed or that I didn't have an enjoyable life. But when I took stock and I began to reflect on my life and the work that I was doing, I realized that actually I was very much out of alignment with my values and with who I was and what it was I really wanted to be doing and the life I wanted to be living. And so that led me on a path of discovery of who am I, what are my values, what do I want to be doing with my life, what is my mission and purpose. So from there, I really discovered a lot about myself, which maybe we can talk about later, but that's really what got me into it, and got me into really focusing on helping people to discover their mission and purpose, but also working as a shamanic practitioner, helping people to rediscover the soul that they actually are. So hence went and studied soul retrieval. And those are the two aspects of the work that I serve now for people. Yeah.
That sounds fascinating, Claire. I'm sure our audience would love to hear more about the soul retrieval process that you do with your clients. So I'm definitely going to delve into that a little bit later. But Brett, if you could perhaps let us know, like, you know, your journey started with your cancer diagnosis, but can you tell us a bit more about that moment? You know, hearing that diagnosis of cancer is often life-changing for many people. How did it impact you?
It flipped everything upside down. So when you get those, you know, that news that you've gotten cancer, and it's just a completely different space that you go into, and it's almost like there's a part of your life that you leave behind, and then there's a new version there's a new kind of space that you go into, and it's filled with fear and uncertainty, and I find there is an amazing gift in that as well, because it was a confrontation with myself around what had led up to the cancer. So for me, it's everything, and I've been on this amazing path because I've been so curious about natural healing, and a lot of what Claire has said actually resonates massively. I feel like I do exactly the same thing, just with different tools and a different backstory, in taking full responsibility for who I truly am, which is on the soul side, and not, as I see it, as this meat suit, although this is a beautiful physical experience. But in really understanding who I truly am, and this constant movement towards understanding my soul as incorporated as part of my experience, the things that I had been doing or previously in my life up until the point that I got cancer that have led up to me actually creating that cancer. So it's a lot of personal accountability as well around what has led to it. And you know, just the fascination of having it, it's not just the physical, it's the mental, it's the emotional. And if you don't connect with the spiritual, you know, you're opening opportunities for disease to be created within the body. So I find that, and it was interesting that you used expert up front. I've become very weary of the word expert because I'm such a work in progress. But I think in opening myself up to a lot of the, I suppose, the accountability of what I do in order to be able to live a fulfilling life, and the habits that I have, and in learning more around what creates health as opposed to disease, it has been a massively and now inspiring journey to actually go on. So I look at my cancer, just go back to the original question, it's something of a gift, and quite honestly, it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I am happier now than I've ever been in my entire life. And it's only because of confronting those challenges, not just in the cancer, but in the causes up to that. And that, you know, still now that, you know, I'm aware of what contributes to health, what contributes to disease. And this is a very curious thing for me. And to be able to do it for a living now is a massive privilege, because now that I understand what it means for me, I can be in a place where I can support people without projecting my stuff onto them as I process my own things and truth.
Well, Brett, I look forward to finding out a bit more about that journey and how you work with your clients, because it's, having heard some of your story before, I really know that the audience today will benefit from hearing more about your story and how you can help them. Cindy, perhaps you can just share with us how you got into your journey. I mean, you're now the director of the School of Intuition and Healing in Cape Town. Did you ever expect you'd be in such a role a few years ago, or 20 years ago?
Oh my goodness, Mark. Oh my goodness. I was the wild child. I lived in London. I worked in a restaurant group, a big wild restaurant group. I had no boundaries. I had multiple dysfunctional relationships. So for me, it's been a really interesting journey. A lot of it revolved around alcohol. And that was my biggest teacher, and I'm very grateful for my abuse of alcohol, because if it hadn't been for that, and for those who know my story, I landed in a prison cell one night, and that was literally the dark night of the soul. One night in prison really changed that. And what's really interesting for me is I was the wounded healer in this journey. Unbeknown to me, because I was the wild child who just was infallible really and didn't, you know. But this really brought me to looking at the wounds and walking the journey of my wounds in order for then me to clear my dis-ease and my issues. A little similar to Claire and Brett, and how the wounded healer became the healer, and how the healer then became the teacher. And that's really my journey. As I learned more, I then needed to share that skill with others in terms of healing, and then in terms of sharing that knowledge with others. And that's how I became the director of the School of Intuition. If I'd been to see a psychic 15 years ago and they told me that, I would have fell off my chair laughing and said, come, let's go to the pub. For sure.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Cindy. And just for the audience, just so that you know a bit about my story, I'm an intuitive energy healer, a teacher and trainer of energy healings. I work with the School of Intuition and Healing as well. And my journey took me from a miserable entrepreneur to through a dark night of the soul and into a journey of healing that became an integral aspect of who I am and the work that I do today. Now back to Claire. Claire, if you can tell me more about this, how does the soul retrieval process work, and how does it impact your clients?
Thanks, Mark. So there are two ways that I work. So one is as a shamanic practitioner doing soul retrieval, and another form of soul retrieval is inner child integration. So I'll just start with talking a bit about the traditional soul retrieval. From the perspective of a shaman, let's imagine we're all born with a soul. Okay, it's not a round thing like this, but I'm just going to say for explanation. So all of us have a soul, and we go about our life, and we experience life, and we perceive life in the way that we do. And throughout our life, what may happen to us, and more often nowadays, because of the world that we live in, we may experience trauma, wounding, or even a perceived trauma or a perceived wound, because the soul doesn't know the difference between something that is true or perceived. So when we experience this trauma or this wound, from the shamanic perspective, what may happen is an essence of the soul might actually break off at that point. Now, it doesn't actually leave you completely, as your soul will never completely leave you, but it may just separate from you. So it preserves that purity of the soul, and it breaks off in time. So a psychologist would call that a dissociation of self, and a shaman calls it a soul loss. And then, of course, what happens is that may set up a whole lot of different patterns of behavior. We often have questions: why am I behaving like this? Why do I react like this? Why am I triggered like this? So what the shaman would do is they would help you to rediscover where that soul part may have dissociated or frozen off in time, and on behalf of the client to go and receive or retrieve that very delicate soul essence, bring it back to the client, and blow that into the client's heart and back into the being. So that in essence is what soul retrieval is, or what soul loss is, and what soul retrieval is from a shamanic perspective, and that's how you would do it. There is another way that you can, another kind of a form of soul retrieval, which is called inner child integration, which is where the practitioner, together with the client, will take the client back in time through like a meditation or a deep relaxation exercise, where the client would then go and speak with their inner child, which is, in essence, it's a part of their soul, and really bring about healing in that way. And then there's a part in that process where the client would then re-merge and bring back that inner child to them. So, and I work in both ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've heard you give an example of your own before about a car accident when you were a child. Perhaps you could share that example.
When I was around about 2 years old, on a Sunday afternoon, we used to go and visit my my aunt and uncle in Hout Bay, which was an area, or is still an area of Cape Town. And anyway, it was one of these Sunday afternoons, and we were driving back, 6 of us in the car, 3 siblings and my parents. And I don't know, Cape Townians, if you know Hout Bay very well, but you've got those big, that big hill that goes up to Constantinople. The back of the car opens, and I fall out the car, and I roll down the car. I roll down the hill. And of course, I don't remember any of this, but this is what I'm told happened. They rushed me to hospital. I had no physical injuries. I was a bit bruised and battered, but I had no other like serious physical injuries. But what happened was later on in life, when I discovered shamanic healing, and I was looking at what had happened at that time when I'd fallen out the car during one of my soul retrievals, what was shown to me was that when I fell out the car, my soul had split. And because of the shock, I mean, you can imagine, I'm a little toddler, I fall out the car. I thought that my family wanted to get rid of me. I mean, that's the perception I was talking about earlier. They want to get rid of me. They've pushed me out the car. I'm dying. I'm dead. There's no family left. So my soul split, and it had set up a pattern of behavior of codependency. So codependency in relationships, but not just relationships, codependency on my work, on money. And this is then what caused my ultimate breakdown of viral arthritis, because I had been aligning to being dependent on things that I thought I needed in order to make me feel safe, to be a part of a family, you know. And then I went down the pathway of really looking at how I could heal that, how I could bring that inner child or those soul parts back to myself, and reframe my understanding of what relationships are and how to be safe and how to feel safe without needing to be dependent on a family or an organization or anything outside of myself, which was a really big, that was a profound shift in my life at that time. And I think on some level, I think I probably needed to go through that. Both Cindy and Brett were talking about the gifts in an experience. And I think a part of that gift was so that I could serve others, so that I could understand what happens when you have your soul split and how it can really set up these negative patterns of behavior, but also how we can empower ourselves to change that, because none of us are victims. We all have the opportunity to take an opportunity or take that gift and to reframe it into something positive.
Yeah. Thanks, Claire. So if you did that process, how has that impacted your life? And with your clients, what sort of changes do you see after doing the soul retrieval process?
So answer to the first part of the question, how it changed my life in so many different ways. So an umbrella answer to that would be letting go of codependency, really feeling safe within myself and not feeling like I need to anchor into something outside of myself for safety. On a practical level, what that did is I realized what my values were. I left because for me, I'm not saying the corporate world is wrong, but for me, it didn't align with my values. I wanted to work for an organization that was ultimately of service, which then took me into working with homeless people. So I really made a shift, a 180-degree shift in terms of my work and following my mission and purpose, but also in becoming clearer about who I was and what it was I wanted to be doing. I also changed countries. I realized that where I've been living for 15 years, at the time I was also living in London, actually. Cindy said she was there as well. But so I'd been living there for 15 years, and it kind of like, it felt like I woke up and I thought, actually, this is not where I want to be living. This doesn't resonate with me anymore. I don't need to be dependent on this place, because I thought that this is where I was going to feel safe or a part of something. Actually, where my soul really wants to be is in South Africa. So I started making, those are just a couple of examples. I mean, there are many more, but I started making decisions, empowering decisions based on really where I wanted to be and what I wanted to be, not needing to anchor into something outside of myself.
Great, thank you, Claire. I'd like to turn to Brett for a while. Brett, your cancer story is really quite remarkable. Perhaps you can share with the audience what really shifted things for you, what changed your journey, and sort of what led to your cancer recovery.
Sure. It was in one moment when, thank you, Mark, for the question. It was, and I'm just thinking, like, you know, what is the moment when that happened? And it was when I sat with a doctor after 3 years of being clear of cancer. So having gone through the whole process and all of the emotional whirlwind and this whole redefining, but not being like 100% aware of what was going on inside until I sat in front of the surgeon who did the primary surgery and got the cancer out at the core. And what essentially happened was, he basically, I'd taken a bouquet of flowers to a male doctor from another male, and I thanked him for saving my life. And there was a card, and in the card I'd written, "Thank you for saving my life." So it was one of those moments of just both of our guards dropped, and it was very vulnerable on both points. And he said to me, "We told you you had a Chihuahua where you had a Rottweiler." And I said, "What? Well, what do you mean?" And he said to me, "We didn't expect you to make it." And I just said, whoa, because I had 4 amazing doctors, like incredible, empathic. It is a rare story of the medical support that I had with, as far as heart is concerned. And I understand that to be a key to healing, one of the biggest keys. And what he essentially, it completely didn't correlate with what the other doctors had said, because the other doctor said, "Yeah, Brett, you got a 95% chance of making it." And I was like, "Yes, those are good odds. I got this. 3 years later, I heard, he told me that I was on the other side of the 50%, not exactly a 95% chance of not making it, but I was on the other side. And it just, something inside of me just flipped, and because nothing made sense, but this feeling rose in me that, oh my word, I'm this, I'm this hero in my own head. And nothing connected too well. And then I started learning around psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, the placebo effect, and all of the science that is out there that essentially leads to your belief system, has everything to do with what happens in your physical world and the choices that you make. And essentially what I realized through that whole process was that the way that I thought, the way that I felt, the discipline I had around those two, my level of connection to the spiritual aspect of myself. I'm not talking about religion whatsoever, but like the mystery of life. All of that influences my physicality. And it was in that moment that he said that my life completely shifted, and my belief around what I went through became the gift as opposed to the curse and the victim mode. And exactly what Claire's actually said around, I'm not the victim of what happened to me. I'm actually also the perpetrator too. But the level of understanding and awareness that I had around what I went through has set me on this beautiful path of learning intellectually what these sciences are, especially psychoneuroimmunology, which kind of incorporates epigenetics and the placebo effect around your belief systems, and then what happens in your internal pharmacy around that, and how to engineer your autonomic nervous system to actually be in a space where it heals and rests and digests more often than it's in a stress mode. And then how I've kind of facilitated that within my life has just been the richest journey. And then organically, as it seemed, supporting people to go through that themselves. And it resonates with me so much in all of your stories, actually. Cindy's, with alcohol, I've had almost not exactly the same, that's unfair. But I've had a similar relationship and a similar awakening. And also yours, Claire, as well. It strikes me that it's quite an amazing thing to be able to go through with awareness that kind of puts you on this path of the wounded healer becomes the healer, or the wounded person becomes the healer. Anyway, I'm going off piece again, and I actually warned everybody that I would do this. So yeah, it's been the most amazing journey, and I feel very grateful. I don't know if that answers any of the questions that you actually had, Mark.
I guess it does, but you really speak about the power of the mind to heal the body, don't you? I mean, if we had to talk about it, the power of the mind to heal is an integral part of your journey.
Massively, yes.
And
the emotions, and the emotions are also quite key as well.
And this is a lot of what you do with your clients, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
So if you had to give us 3 key points to utilize the mind to heal the body, if you could summarize that into a few little nuggets, what would you say?
Number one, awareness. Awareness is everything to me. There's nothing that is more powerful than just becoming aware of what your mind is doing, what your emotions are doing. When something happens, what is the stories that your mind is telling you? And then what is your knee-jerk emotional reaction to that? That awareness it's everything for me, because I have a lot of my clients are like, but Brett, this is self-discipline. No, start with awareness. Awareness is the key to any shift happening. At least it's my experience. So I would say become aware of how you think about the things that you might struggle with and how you react emotionally to the things that you might struggle with. So bring awareness into that would be the first thing. The second thing is gratitude. Gratitude for me is the key to absolutely everything. It's the key to abundance, the key to the law of attraction, it's the key to healing, it's the key to self-love, to compassion, to being kinder to other people, because you're being kinder to yourself. So as I experience it, the more I focus on what I'm grateful for, the more that my autonomic nervous system just starts to relax, and I start to get into this calm place and just go, okay, I'm actually okay. And from that okay place, that's when I can work with things that might be more challenging. So it's almost centering myself through gratitude. And the last one is mindfulness. And that is, I'm sure with everybody in the room has their story around meditation, and it's like fighting it, and this dance that happens around mindfulness, be it meditation or be it in a practice like I do when I'm walking in nature. I take my shoes off, usually go barefoot, and it brings me present. So it would be those 3 things that would be like the start of a beautiful awakening and a journey of, for me, self-care, self-love, self-compassion. So
awareness, gratitude, and mindfulness. 3 key points. Now, it's interesting what you say about gratitude, because for those of you who don't know, we also run a podcast on Monday mornings at 10 a.m. called Conversations from the Heart. And in a recent discussion with our panel for Conversations from the Heart, we're exploring how one becomes more heart-centered. This idea of living life through the heart is really quite important and can lead to profound shifts. And one of the things that we came up with an audience of about 20 having an interesting conversation was gratitude. Gratitude is such a powerful way to get us into this heart space, to open up the heart, to get that sort of wisdom flowing that really flows when you connect to the heart. Now, Claire, you do some work about getting people more heart-centered. You've got a program actually about centering in the heart, don't you? Can you tell us a bit about that?
So just I will in a moment, but also just about gratitude. I just love what you said about appreciation, because you know, when law of attraction was all the rage back in the day, whenever that was, and we all read and listened to Esther and Jerry Hicks, and they were always talking about this appreciation. And I was like, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to see what this is. And they were advising that every morning when you wake up, you write your appreciation lists. So even if you're feeling like really awful, what can you appreciate about this moment? Well, I can appreciate that I'm breathing right now, or that I had a bed to sleep in last night. And what I noticed when I began doing these appreciation exercises or these lists is that there was even more and more and more to appreciate. I realized throughout my day, it made me more mindful and aware of actually during the day, I'd go about my day, but I'm appreciative that the sun was even shining, or that that person let me go in front of them in the traffic or whatever it was. And that's a part of actually really opening the heart and connecting with a much greater part of yourself. I think, because I think the heart, in answer to your second question, the heart is, they say the heart is the seat of the soul. So if we can really, you know, I was talking earlier on about anchoring into things outside of myself, but actually if we can learn how to anchor into our heart, we're anchoring into our soul and we're anchoring into spirit. So one of the greatest wounds, I think, of our time is the wound of separation or perceived separation. And what we do our entire life is look for things to make us feel whole. Okay, some to a larger extent, others to a lesser degree. But the more heart work that we can do, and heart work sounds like a bit of a contradiction because heart is not actually work. The more heart being we can be, the more we feel okay. You were talking about being, you know what, it's okay. All this chaos is going on around us. It's okay. I'm in my heart. So ways that we can get into our heart is totally, the program that I've got is actually a 10-day meditation program that takes you through various themes, if you want to call it that, of the heart. So one would be letting go. So letting go of addictions, or letting go of codependence, or letting go of thought forms that aren't helpful for you. Another theme is forgiveness, forgiving, letting go of people perhaps, or yourself, that you feel you need to forgive in order to move on. Appreciation is actually one of them as well. So there are various themes that help us to not discover our heart, but to let go of anything that is blocking our connection to our heart. And then we end at the end with joy, because ultimately, in my experience of it, the soul is joy. The original essence of the soul is joy. And so if we can maybe question ourselves even on a daily basis, what actually brings me joy? Where is my joy? What work brings me joy? What type of conversations bring me joy? And follow that. That's really going to be our beautiful pathway back into the heart.
Yeah. Thanks, Claire. So, Brett, if I can come back to you for a second. In your program, you also do a lot of work with gratitude. What are some of the tools that you guide the people, your clients, to in order to enhance their gratitude?
Well, this is a tricky one, because I found gratitude practice, at least in my approach, has changed over time. So I started with writing down a full page of things that I'm grateful for. And then I went and I watched an amazing video with Marie Forleo, and it was around the quality of the gratitude and the energy you put into it. So for me, what I've realized is writing something that I'm grateful for is one thing, but feeling it is a very different thing. So it's always bringing the feeling into it. So what I typically do when I'm in sessions is, okay, what are you grateful for? And then, you know, they'll come up with a couple of things. Then I get them to go almost into a meditative state and then put their hand on their heart, because this is known as a bit of a biohack. Because when you put your hand on your heart, serotonin comes out of your pineal gland and essentially calms you down and puts you into, there we go. And it puts you into, it moves your autonomic nervous system into your parasympathetic, which means it's rest, digest, and heal. So that means it softens in your feeling, and the good feeling hormones start to get created. Then you associate that with the gratitude, and now you've got thinking and feeling. So I've used different techniques myself, and I've gotten one that it's a little bit playful, but it works really beautifully for myself and my partner. So we've got a gratitude jar in the toilet, and then we've got different colored Post-it notes and a pen. So we sit down in the toilet, and then we write down one thing that we're grateful for on the Post-it note, and then we put it up on the wall. So on the wall are those, all of these colored things, and then when I sit down, my partner Marissa's, I get to read hers for the day, and I'm like, oh man, that's beautiful. And then I'm going to have a chat with her about it. So it feeds this gratitude conversation, and it's shared with other people. And we had people around the other day, and only the woman, because when you're actually sitting on the toilet, well, not only the woman, but when you're sitting on the toilet, you can only see it there. And so then we get these little beautiful notes from our guests who read ours and then add theirs, and it's just such a beautiful heart softener. So this is our technique that we're using at the moment, and I don't think we're going to change it. I think we're going to amplify it somehow. But I get to read my partner's appreciation. We have little love notes to one another. It's really, really sweet. But it does get it. I mean, from a practical perspective, it gets you into your parasympathetic, and that calms you down. And that's the place that you want to return to again and again. It's what mindfulness does, essentially. So,
what a great use of some otherwise dead time where you might just be.
Can I give you the name of the sign in the toilet?
Yes.
So it's poo, positivity, and perspective in a big heart. That's the sign.
Well, there's something that you can all take home and start practicing immediately. Going to the chat, I see Hannah's got a question, and I think this is directed to Brett primarily, but I'm going to let everybody have a go at this. How did forgiveness fit in your healing process? According to Louise Hay, cancer often has to do with holding grudges or having a secret. How did this apply to your situation?
That's a doozy, eh? My word, come out swinging. Forgiveness is a tricky thing, and it's more for me around forgiving myself. And let me be totally truthful and vulnerable about where I am at the moment, what I'm going through. So finance is a big thing for me right now, and I've been really challenged essentially to take ownership of myself in the financial thing. I actually had to loan money, and it's not an uncommon thing that's going on at the moment. But what has come up for me is that these old belief systems are coming around what my relationship with money is. So when it comes to forgiveness, I've right now and currently going through this process of forgiving myself for whatever I've done in the past to get me into a situation that is challenging, let's say financially, or whatever theme is going on at the moment. I think we're all dealing with this very similar thing, but through different lenses and different subjects. So forgiveness for me it's a tricky one, because I think forgiving somebody else, I find that quite easy. But forgiving myself for something, that's a process that takes a huge amount of courage to do, humility and deep vulnerability. So at the moment, I'm doing the artist's way. And what's coming out is a lot of forgiveness of self for old belief systems that I didn't intentionally create. So forgiveness around cancer, it's right there. It's a very, very, very big thing. And it's what I'm finding right now is the 3 journaling pages every single morning to be able to, and then just witnessing what is coming out there. And there's a lot that requires that forgiveness. And it's a tough, but a tricky process to go through. And everyone, I find, goes through a very different way of doing it. For me, journaling is something that is very powerful for me.
Yeah, having also...
but yes, it's in there, sorry. Big time for cancer.
Yeah, taking a look at the artist's way, it's a great tool for especially the journaling, because I think the thing with forgiveness for yourself or for others is actually the awareness. Being aware that you're actually judging yourself or judging another, upset at yourself or upset at another. And most people aren't aware of this. I've recently started a 12-week program, Healing the Aspects of the Extended Life Body, where we sort of delve into like the past life debris in the energy field. And in week 1, the aspect that came up was the soul. And the way to clear the debris in the soul aspect is actually through a lot of self-forgiveness. And the feedback from the people on the course was like, you know, they weren't really aware of how much they were judging themselves, how much they were like getting down on themselves.
Massive.
Yeah. And when you bring that into awareness, you can actually heal it.
Exactly. And you can work with it. And then, you know, that awareness just allows a process to happen for you to get to that place. Yeah. Very important component. Good question. Very good question.
Cindy, do you perhaps have any comments on the forgiveness process for self or for others that you've come across on your journey?
So the one that worked for me was the Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian prayer. And I don't know if you want to type that in the chat box, if you can, Mark, just so people can get the spelling. It's the most extraordinary process of doing the Ho'oponopono, which is, I love you, please forgive me, I'm sorry, and thank you. And just by repeating these 4 words as a mantra, with visualizing what I used to visualize other people, and I didn't know why it didn't work, because actually I needed to visualize myself. So when you start this, it's always, well, for me, it was always about the other person, but the person who I needed to forgive was me. And I'd done a lot of work on my journey. It was only about a year ago where I realized that if I just heal me and stop worrying about the outside and focused on the inside, that actually everything around me changes. And that for me, when the penny dropped for that was really, really significant. Because you become healers and then you externalize it again. And although I had internalized that the initial part of my journey was all about me, trust me, the healing process, but then when you are a healer or you're facilitating healer, you're looking outside yourself again. And actually, it's continuing to do, as I heal myself more, the people around me will heal. So the wounds and the more healing I do, the people naturally do it. And we need to come out of that cognitive thinking process into that energetic transcendence almost. I want to talk about this energy that is intuition, that is feeling, that is not the intellect, because the minute we go into the intellect, we will automatically face outward that person, that person, that person. So for just work on yourself, just forgive yourself, and things around you will change. I was working with a client who had this huge issue around their partner, them having to be the breadwinner in the family and carrying the strain of being the breadwinner. And they didn't, and we worked a lot around just do the healing, forgive yourself for what you've done, rather than forgiving the partner. And when they did the healing on themselves, all of a sudden, things have changed. So I really would like to invite people who are listening to really just focus on them. Let everyone else carry on their dance. Let them carry on their world. And then people change around you.
Yeah, that's profound. I really,
that's awesome.
You know, and what's interesting is you've been on a healing journey for many, many years. To talk about a penny dropping a year ago might be a bit daunting to some people. A very profound book called Why Again? And I think you can find it for free on whyagain.org. And what the author has done is he's gone and looked at the shamanic meanings. Sorry, not the shamanic meanings, the Aramaic translations of some of the biblical teachings.
Sorry, Mark, to interrupt. What is Aramaic?
Aramaic is the language that was actually spoken by Jesus and the people in that time.
Thank you.
So the Bible is actually translated from Aramaic into, I think, Greek, and from Greek into Latin, from Latin to English.
Thank you, Mark.
So he's taken the original Aramaic meanings of these words, and he's gone through this forgiveness process, and the book Why Again is for free, but it explains exactly this. Forgiveness changes the way you see the world. It changes the way the world actually reflects back to you. So if you can do this forgiveness process properly, the person who's pushing your buttons somehow just stops pushing your buttons. Not only do you not feel the button being pushed anymore, but somehow their behavior changes and you don't even need to do anything to tell them about it. Because you're changing the very essence of your being, and the world around you is just going to reflect back differently. It is really quite a profound book.
I have one question. Does that work with tech? There's some work to do, Mark.
Mark, could I add something about my perspective and like part of my journey to do with forgiveness? And this was also, for me, only something that I realized a couple of years ago. I'm very quick to forgive. I always was, you know, just let it go, forgive, it's okay, I understand why they've done that, whatever. But for my personal journey and my experience, what really helps me and what I realized I needed to shift in myself was firstly acknowledging a bit about what you were talking about earlier, being really aware of what you're feeling. I had to really acknowledge what I was feeling towards somebody. I had to really voice it, not necessarily to the person, but either in a letter or just say it out loud or get it out of my system. I needed to move it because what I was doing was I was overly compassionate. I was jumping right up to the end finish line and going, oh, it's okay. It's all okay. I forgive you. But I wasn't honoring myself. I wasn't honoring what do I feel in this process? Why do I feel that? And that kind of goes a little bit back to inner child integration. So when we honor what that part of us is feeling, we are we're really reconnecting with the wound within ourselves as to why we're feeling that. We're getting it, we're moving it, we're getting it out. This is not to do with the other person. This is not to do with blame. This is not to do with being a victim. It's about honor of the self. And that was part of my journey. And when I realized that as part of my process and I could move that out, then allow myself to go to the higher perspective of why this has happened. What is the gift? How can I forgive and really let go? They know not what they do or whatever the situation is. It felt for me just a lot more empowering in my ability to move forward. Just felt like I wanted to bring that in.
Yeah, it's an important part of the journey, boundaries, and being able to have boundaries. Now, I know, Cindy, on the 2-year healing course through the School of Intuition and Healing, the module where we address boundaries is one of the most profound modules that the students go through. Can you perhaps just share about that and some of the changes that perhaps you've seen in the students over the years?
So, Mark, you're really lucky because I did the PowerPoint for that this morning. So I'm on it.
Good timing.
Yeah, really good timing. So the students go through, I think when we look at whether you have soft boundaries or rigid boundaries, or you have flexible boundaries, and we take them through this. And funny enough, Mark, it was also the most profound exercise I did on the healing course. I mean, I went, and we do a thing with circles, and we put people in our circles as to where they are and how close they are to us and what boundaries we need with certain people in the workspace possibly being too close to your inner space and parents possibly being too close to your inner space. And that exercise, when people start realizing that they are responsible for their own energy, and they are the ones that are creating it, like attracts like, if you need to do the work. And so by keeping people at the right space that you want, actually becomes clearer, and your relationships get better and better. So the codependency, which Claire was talking about earlier, and all those struggles, was really around the boundary that you had with other people. And once that child was brought back and healed, and that part of the soul was integrated, then the boundaries came that were better for everybody. And I think it's really an important lesson. So unfortunately, due to load shedding, they will only get that lesson next week.
Thank you, Cindy.
Could I add something about boundaries, what you were saying earlier about boundaries? And I think for me, part of my lesson in boundaries was to learn actually to put yourself first is actually not selfish. I always thought, oh, you know, I've got to put other people first. I've got to put other people, you know, they come before me. And that was a part of where my boundaries became very diluted. So it's actually okay to put yourself first and to actually think about what is right for you. I think is a good place to start with boundaries.
I think a lot of people on the spiritual journey struggle with boundaries because they think they've got to be in service and kind and like, you know, sweet and kind and, you know, this sort of facade of being spiritual.
Yeah.
But it's actually can just be, it can work against you. And I think the first time I came across this concept was in Conversations with God, where he talks about enlightened self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
Sort yourself out, and those around you will sort of like adjust
for sure. For sure.
And there's one thing. So when I started kind of doing this work, it was interesting because my mindset was I'm going to serve and help people, and and the ego and all of this ego came out, like I'm going to do all of this, and then I started to become really in going through the path really cognizant of the fact that my energy started to light up when I started to like do conversation. Like at the moment, I'm excited as anything, and it's a selfish thing. I'm doing this because this is bringing me great joy.
Yeah.
Like really, really, really great joy. And that's been a very interesting shift from the beginning of this path to I'm going to be the server, to be like, no, I'm happy doing this. Like this is Kip.
It's your joy.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. The greatest service that we can do to humankind is to stay in joy, to follow our joy. And by sharing this joy, we can share wisdom, we can help others because it brings us joy. As soon as it becomes a chore, and I've been there, and I'm sure you guys have been there, it actually, you start falling
I think there is a saying that says, find your gift and then give it away.
Yeah.
As somebody famous said it or whatever. Like, you know,
yeah,
find your gift. Doesn't even need to be your gift, I suppose. Find your joy, give it away. Share it. Beautiful thing to do.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you guys have any sort of final comments before we wrap up. Anything that's struck out in this conversation, anything that stuck out in this conversation that you want to share?
So I'll start with,
yeah.
I think just a word. I think forgiveness for me is really self-forgiveness.
Yeah, it's a profound process. And I'm not sure if it's a one-off event. I think it's more than unraveling or peeling back the layers that need forgiveness that we can work on over a period of time and eventually, does it ever happen? Get to the bottom of it.
I think it's the journey, Mark.
Yeah.
And you know, as I said earlier, you know, about a year ago, it's that journey, and it wasn't that I was unhappy then. It was just a new realization, and that excites me too. Is that when I, you know, what am I going to learn from this? What is the learning? And I've become so curious about when something feels uncomfortable. What am I going to get out of it? What learning am I going to get? And that's really, really important for me.
I like that. There's a lesson in A Course in Miracles that says, all things are lessons God would have me learn. And when you start looking at your challenges as lessons, things start to shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Claire, how about you? Any parting remarks?
Well, I'm going to give one word too.
Cool.
My word will be presence. I think it was a little bit, it's kind of something you were saying earlier around, I can't remember exactly what you said, but the mindfulness, being really present with what you're feeling. Don't run away from what you're feeling. I think so often we, especially on the spiritual journey, we want to chase the light. We want to go to the light. We want to feel better. We want to be better. And there is no better than right here, right now. Even those dark or uncomfortable feelings have got a gift. So sit with that feeling, allow the feeling, be present with yourself and your heart. What is the gift in that moment? And when you do that, that will then flow you forward in the way that you want to go forward, rather than you trying to rush away from that feeling. So presence.
Lovely. Thank you, Claire. Brett, you're in the hot seat now.
Okay, cool. So I've changed my mind 3 times since I've been listening to the 3 of you. So mine is actually playfulness. I've found that playfulness is access to a deeper part of myself and a less serious part of myself that doesn't take, I'm not finding the right words, but playfulness, because it makes everything else accessible. And yeah, playfulness. Clearly I'm not meant to define it for anybody.
I like playfulness a lot, except that I was going to choose joy. And I think playfulness kind of steals the thunder of joy.
Sorry.
So I am going to go with gratitude. The word that you gave us earlier, because the gratitude takes us into the heart space. Thank you to everybody for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett,
this was fun.
Claire, thank you, Cindy.
Amazing. Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
hosting,
much.
Mark.
And thanks to everybody who came
And
as
Alex
well.
in the background.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Alex for running the tech for us. And to all the audience, thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. And hopefully we'll see you on one of our other platforms shortly. Thank you very much.